Hello, everybody. Sorry for being late. I was in another meeting and room, and I'm just like, where is everybody? And then I went out and realized, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. So sorry for being late.
Morning, everybody.
Hi, Amy.
I'm dealing with something right now, so I'm gonna join you as soon as I can.
Good luck, Paul.
See you soon, I hope.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It is nice to see you here on this absolutely 100% perfect day outside. I'm just checking to make sure that we have quorum, and it looks like we do. We have Bob and Austin and Andrea and myself. Paul will be right back. We're just missing Susan, I think. And we are ready to go. So my computer is doing weird things. I'm going to ask it to stop doing that. So I will call the meeting to order at 11:03. We do have one adjustment to the agenda that Clayton requested, and that we will not be doing the approval of committee minutes today, but we will be adding a discussion with the Nicrason group. Are there any other, and we'll just swap them one for one. So number 4 will be a discussion with the Nicrason group. And are there any other adjustments to the agenda?
I'm from the public, if you can't hear me.
I can hear you, and thank you for being here.
Are you Amy?
I
Are you Amy?
Yes.
I'm Kimberly Clark. I'm a regular rider with GMT, Green Mountain Power, not Green Mountain Power, Green Mountain Transit.
You got it. If there's no other changes to the agenda, we'll go right to public comment. And Kim, it sounds like you have something to say. We have 2 minutes. And
Okay.
I'll ask you to
Yeah,
stay
I
within
just
the-
recommend you guys the Market Street thing is not working out very well. Nobody likes it, and I recommend you guys get rid of it. Everybody freaked out the first day you guys started the Market Street thing on the
Okay.
Wilson bus and the airport bus. All the drivers freaked out, all the passengers freaked out, and I freaked out, and I was one of them. It's
Okay.
just too complicated, too much traffic, too many cars, too many crosswalks.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. We will
And
be
I also
sure
have
to-
another feedback. Do I have time to do
Sure.
one more?
Just one more.
Okay, I recommend to the GMT board that have John Moore be general manager. He's the best one for GMT to be the general manager for Green Mountain Transit.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Amy.
All right. All right.
Hi, John Moore.
Are there any other members of the public present? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our agenda. And just ask that folks mute themselves if they are on the meeting. And we'll move right over to the discussion with the Nicrason group. And Clayton, I'll toss that over to you.
Yes. So thank you, Amy. And so I'm very happy to report that we have 2 folks who are very important to GMT's life, especially at the State House, and that is Adam Nicrason, the lead at the Nicrason Group, and Teo Zagar, that is our person who has been assigned to GMT. They've been advising us for almost a year now and helping us navigate issues with the legislature, and have been a great help in helping us understand how GMT's needs for assistance play in with the lay of the land at the legislature. And so I thought that at our last meeting, we talked about the roadmap that we have ahead of us when it comes to our service levels, when it comes to our statute. And I wanted to have Adam and Teo kind of give us their perception on what the 2026 session would look like so that we could go into this process with eyes wide open. And so I'm going to turn it over to Adam and Teo. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here with Clayton and Teo and all of you. I'm Adam Nicrason. I head Nicrason Group. We're a many multi-client government and public affairs firm. work with a lot of different, in a long-term way, entities, quasi-governmental, nonprofit, community-based that are serving essential needs for Vermont's community infrastructure, healthcare, for housing, planning, an array of areas where we have kind of a window into the important work you do, and really appreciate the opportunity to help you try to serve Vermonters. A few top lines. My time with you kind of be laid out in a sense of, one is 100,000-foot level set, just to give you kind of independent ground truthing of your sense about where Vermont state government is in the arc of kind of last year and into next year, and governing pressures and what's on the table. And then a second part, which is, Green Mountain Transit's position in a number of issues, and an evolving space and time. It's like hard because everything's constantly changing. We're going to talk about how GMT is engaging around all that. Jumping to the very end, and having helped you some concierge your kind of communications to state leaders, we see you have healthy state government relations with the executive branch, with the agency, with legislators. It's very information based, and we see that as a real positive, and something that you earn every week with how you show up as Green Mountain Transit. And it's valuable and important to you as governing leaders of the enterprise to hear us say, we think you've been really kind of levelizing, and that's going well and good, because it's hard times and you're all in it together. Now, going back to the top lines, the 100,000 feet at state government affairs, education reform, and the tax policy that's associated.
Adam, we lost your audio. Oh. Adam, we can't hear you. Is anyone able to do
Adam, we lost your audio.
That should help.
You're back.
Okay, we're 100,000 feet.
Yep.
School education reform.
Mhm.
The big thing. Okay.
We didn't hear anything about education reform or whatever you were referring to with
Yeah.
the big thing.
I'm starting back there now. Okay, so I'm saying the big setup is 100,000-foot level set, and some about GMT. And I started with jumping to the end, saying we started with you a year ago, and we see very good professional relations with all the governing bodies, and that's earned on the merits. And good job in that regard. Education reform is super significant because as community service providers, you're in communities that are about to be going through big changes. It's hard. Now, your purview on that is a big Northwest Vermont part of it right now, because you have your metropolitan service, and we're currently doing the rural services too. And for lawmakers, it is capturing all of their attention, energy, and capacity, the education reform. And it's a big deal and hard. And so you're working in a space that's on the shoulders of everybody, all hands on deck to try and do education reform. And they're partway through it. And this year will be a big year. Now, they head into that in a fiscal environment that we have new information from the emergency board, the governor, the top of the legislature. They're regularly revealing the state's fiscal position. And while revenues are modestly up, and the effects of the federal legislation that's kind of downshifting support in a number of areas to states, they're coming a little later. So right now we're in a coming fiscal year that
is the end of the COVID era one times and just before we feel much of the effects of the federal policy changes. And, the signals from the Commissioner of the Department of Finance to all the agencies just went out, prepares budgets that go up 3%, but look for areas to cut and eliminate. And you can see in the news, the legislative leaders followed suit saying, we are going to have policy committees look to eliminate services more and reprioritize more than suggest new spending. Okay. That's clear instructions from both of them. And you're amidst that. The good news is it's not the sky is falling at this point in time in a fiscal area, even as it's tumultuous. Now, workforce, which you grapple with regularly, and good job with some recent developments in that area on your own operating level, which are meaningful, and state government leaders notice how you're managing all that and have respect for it. The workforce issues of housing, childcare, education, 802 education, it's all what the other priority that is really galvanizing and driving everything. Education reform and growing the state's economy. That's what's going on at the State House. The governor continues to be no new taxes, and that's 9 years running, and a wall that is now backed by the veto sustaining margin in the legislature and kind of the governing atmosphere. It runs into your fiscal challenges as lawmakers have to grapple with transportation fund shortfalls and how to deal with them and what to do in that area. Let me pause and over to you, Teo, if there's anything to add. That's kind of a 5-minute version of starting off at the 100,000 foot level.
Yeah, no, I would just add that it was encouraging to hear from Clayton that despite the broader federal uncertainties, that the reauthorization bill may have some benefit for GMT in the long term, and also that the next fiscal year budget gap is maybe smaller than we were planning for last year. So yeah, I think we just keep bringing this information to our legislators at these monthly Zooms, and Adam and I continue to have conversations in the hallways and with legislators before session starts, and hopefully be in a good position starting the session out.
Questions?
One of the questions that I'll have to kind of start us off, and I think I know the answer based on what you're saying, is that we here working at GMT as employees and also as our board, we're all transit advocates, and we think about a future that has expanded transit options. My guess is that for next year and probably the year after, approaching the legislature with sort of new ideas, what is your take on that?
Well, it's always a good idea to be bringing reprioritization that is saying, here's how we can manage to the money, and here's the stuff on the bubble. And it's really a choice for the state leaders, agency and legislative officials, whether to act on where to expand, where to adjust, and things like that. But we would encourage you to be road mapping. But the short answer is, Clayton, no, we're not in an atmosphere where adding money is the reflex of the state capital that works. But when you say new initiatives, I think what you're doing locally and what the state is doing is reprioritizing and adjusting. And so we always take your idea of we have to change service as we have to kind of reroute it, in some way or adjust it. But we're relentlessly promoting that you bring forward whatever the balanced budget is and the stuff on the bubble so that there can be stretch opportunity for leaders to make adjustments that work. We never know at the agency level how they can really make adjustments in the December or January work they do. We really, at the legislature, they need to know what the options are, and that's what that sounds like, Clayton.
Thank you. And so for our board members, questions for Adam and Teo about the session, and anything that you would want to hear from them as we think about the coming months and the decisions we're going to need to make?
Go ahead, Andrea.
I have a question sort of around like what can we do as board members to like make sure our representatives, our senators are kind of paying attention to this, are understanding kind of the you know, where we want them to
Yeah.
kind of be paying attention. Like what should we be doing?
Totally understood. Great question. And part of a governing role for these types of entities, community-based service, is much of it is governing, right? Fiscal accountability and public transparency and the duties of oversight, but bringing voice to the needs of the operation or those governing decisions is a good idea. And so the direct answer is encouraging your local elected House reps and senators to be aware of the opportunities that GMT is creating for these legislative forums, and be like, hey, were you able to get in there and check that out? Do you have any questions? Welcome the opportunity to dialogue with you on this, or just be a resource for you. And it brings more voice than, their lawmakers are in a deluge of communications. And when citizen leaders say, hey, check out our Clayton and Teo have this engagement program for like, we're in hard times and we're struggling with services. And so our MO for you is bring all those roadmaps to leaders and make sure they see them as they're coming and are grappling with the choices that you are, because you're in it together. And these forums they've had with community leaders that are informational are the, Andrea, short answer for what you can do, drawing attention to them.
I know we're going to run short on time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
So as part of our messaging is, since the legislative focus is going to be the education and the financial / workforce type things, is there a way that we can turn our importance to fit into that mold, such as in some cases we are transporting for education, and as they do their consolidations and the brands, there's going to be a lot of transportation discussions of how our kids going to get from one place to another, or even the workers that now have to go to schools that are farther away than they used to getting to. And then from the workforce finance piece is attracting people to come work here. Many people we're trying to attract are used to public transit being available without even thinking about it.
Yes.
And how do we get that message that we're part of solving that problem when you got public transit to help solve their problems?
It's part of it's self-revealing, so have confidence in it, because you're an essential service provider for workforce, health, medical rides, compact living, affordable housing, people getting to their jobs. And so you are different in that regard. But the short answer is yes, you're an essential service provider to the workforce and affordable health care. I'm pretty sure that's what we're saying and what people understand, but bringing that voice, Bob, is essentially the times.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like keeping it, since they're focused on that, remind them we're part of that. Don't forget us and say we're an afterthought for this year. It's like we got to be in the middle of the answer.
And one of the things that we were able to do last session with assistance from the Necrason group was we got to testify in front of House, Human Services. And so I suspect that this coming session, I would love to get, we've made some connections with the committee with jurisdiction over housing. And so getting those committees to, have a more clear, direct line of sight to how we support their goals, I think is going to be critical for us.
And I was just going to pick up on Bob's point about school and transportation. It's more than just, GMT transports kids to school, which is straightforward and understandable. But I think when you look at kind of what Cider is doing in the islands about contracting with the school district to transport kiddos who can't necessarily ride a traditional bus, and the amount that a school district like Maple Run in St. This is what I know, Maple Run in St. Albans, how much they spend on transporting kids out of district to services that they don't offer is an intense cost for them. So I think there's really specific benefits to schools if there were more transportation options or in a more efficient system. So I just wanted to, it's nuanced and it's not always well understood. So I just wanted to really tie that knot that Bob was poking. So that's that.
Got it. Amy, well stated and understood. You guys are in the essential service business. Like, we got to move people. And so we're grappling with fiscal constraints, but the services quality and, all of our work with government affairs is to try and support the agency, support the legislature, and support Great Mountain Transit. And, we would want you all to be rest assured in that regard as we wrap up that, alignment with your state leaders is the best way to succeed.
Great. I do believe we are running short on time, but I wanted to give anybody, if they had a question they wanted to ask in this moment. Otherwise, we will move along. I'm not seeing any movement. So Adam and Teo, thank you so much for being here and the work that you're doing and helping us to really stay on top of things and really have those strong relationships. That has been an incredible space to have moved to. So thank you.
And Teo, if you have time, we're going to jump into a funding update that I think that you would find interesting. But if you don't have time to stay on, that's I'll talk to you separately.
No, I can stay on till about noon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. All right, moving forward into a discussion about updated financials and service reductions.
Okay. So at our last meeting, we went through a roadmap talking about the work that we would have to do in the coming months with one of the biggest challenges that we had ahead, how we would address a $3 million funding gap for next year. And I'm happy to report that since that meeting, we've closed out our fiscal year 25 financials, and we got much better than expected news on our financial position there. Through a variety of factors, our funding gap for next year is not going to be about $3 million, but would be about $1 million. We also know in talking with VTrans that there is the likelihood that there would be additional carbon reduction funds available for us next year of about $700,000, which means that our true funding gap for next year may be as small as $300,000. And so this means that to balance our fiscal year 27 budget, it may be a tenth of the size of the problem than we originally thought. And we still have a future where the fiscal year 28 budget is short about $3 million. The good financial news that we received is mostly sort of one-time funds. And we all know from our experience in the past few years that one-time funds, are problematic because they're great in that year and then not afterwards. And so I'm not saying that our future financial situation is bright and cheerful, because we still are unsustainable. But we may have the opportunity to pause service reductions and not have to go through a wide scale reduction like planned. And so, one, I want to make sure that you all are aware of this, and then talk about, and I don't necessarily think that we need to have a decision here. In fact, I would discourage us from having a decision here. I think that what we're going to want to do is spend some of the board meeting time talking about how we want to address this, whether we want to continue reducing service perhaps at a slower rate to help get us to the sustainable, whether we want to take a pause on additional service reductions to see how things play out with our attempts to create another funding source for transit. And one of the things that I think that we need to also decide is, are we going to need all of the extra meetings that we talked about if we are not going to have to go through a large public process of, identifying, $3 million worth of service to cut? So that's sort of kind of the introduction to the discussion. And I wanted to, before going, forward, let or ask folks if they have any questions, clarifying questions, or thoughts there. It's
Seeing
okay.
none.
Just
Two.
one point here, sorry. That's good news potentially, Clayton. I guess what comes to my mind is that, if we don't start moving things to the positive sooner, that means the gap will be larger later.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that as we look ahead, we'll begin to make some cuts timely, or however if we raise funds, that's a better. But if we don't, then we need to make some changes and do that sooner so it has the impact going forward.
Paul, I think you're, as usual, hitting the nail on the head. And sort of as we discussed last year, with the desire to implement some of the reductions sooner than later, the sooner the reductions happens, the additional savings that happen, because they will be, we'll have more time to benefit from them. And so I think that that's why we still need to, consider whether we are at the right level of service, or we need to have less service in order to be financially sustainable.
Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I agree with what was said by Paul. I mean, I think one of my biggest regrets on this board was when we continued to allow Fare Free to continue to operate Fare Free when we knew we had a pending fiscal cliff. And I mean, I pushed back on that heavily. I wish I'd pushed back on that harder. I think we need to proceed, we need to take good news in stride and proceed as if the news isn't that good. I think we should keep the meetings on the books. I think while we have a little bit of breathing room, we shouldn't back off. We should press that advantage. And I think we need to take this, I don't think we can let ourselves off the hook a little bit because we have some good news. I also just have worries about, being perceived as the boy who cried wolf. If we talk about, impending doom and service cuts, and then we say, actually, no, things are looking a little bit better, and don't do them. I think we've been in that position a few times, and it's I won't say hurt our credibility, but I think it's brought into question, are things as dire as brought before, because they always seem to pull out just in the nick of time. And you know, so anyway, all this is to say, I don't necessarily want to back off on the trajectory we've worked on previously, just because things are looking a little brighter. I want to be deliberate and judicious, and work on a strategy and the little bit of breathing room we have now. And I'd love to, and I think we can talk about this at finance on Thursday, see from Nick, what the next 3 years, 4 years look like in terms of trajectory with the cost savings, with the one time that we're looking at, what that means. Because when we looked at this, when we were contemplating Fare Free, to go back and not to beat a dead horse here, I think there were some of us who said, look, fiscal cliff on the horizon, let's keep some dry powder. And that might be the move here.
The thoughts? I'll put my 2 cents in that. I think the messaging might be that we worked really hard and made a lot of tough choices, and that seems to be giving us the results that we were looking for at the moment. And I do think if we can hold, right, and not shift service, we can allow the public to feel a little bit more confident in the service and feel confident using it, and then it's not going to change. And I think that's important in recapturing riders. And then the third thing I would say is, if we can give ourselves some breathing room for some really good strategic kind of planning, and B, I still think that corporate partners, not sponsors, corporate partners can help come. We could use what little breathing room we can secure to really move that needle, so that we are not at the whim of the funding streams, the federal and state funding streams that we have. So I'm wondering whether, we celebrate that the hard work is paying off. We're getting what we're looking for, and we can pause our shifts and work on ridership and corporate.
I like that framing. I'd say on corporate sponsorships and partnerships, I mean, I'd say all of the things at the front end of the pipeline that are squeezing us are squeezing those folks too. So that's going to get harder. B, I'd say, that's CATMA's job. I think we should have a longer, more in-depth conversation with CATMA about what they can do and how we can support them to expand that, rather than, I don't want us to recreate the wheel on that. That's kind of been my perspective for a long time on that issue. I also think, I'll just leave it there. I think that's kind of the role of CATMA, and we should do that. And I think it could be, if we feel like what CATMA's doing is inadequate, or there's something else we can be doing that's value add in that space. I feel like that's the role of our nonprofit entity, which I'd like to see, up and running as soon as possible, but we've hit some headwinds on that just from a bureaucratic place. But maybe there's a way we can stand that up in an unofficial capacity, to get that outside influence and that outside perspective that we do need on our board.
Yeah, whatever. I think that's fine. CATMA is, has a great role in this. So maybe our focus is supporting them. Like, I don't necessarily care what avenue. I think it's an untapped resource that, although they might be squashed the same as taxpayer, revenue, they're mostly giving nothing. Most organizations give nothing. So I think anyway, I've said it before. I'll stop. Bob, Andrea, thoughts?
I mean, I think to Amy, to your point, I think we did make some really, really hard choices to get to where we are, and they didn't hurt no one. Like, we made nighttime service worse. We made weekend service worse. We cut the Jeffersonville route. Like, that affected people. And I don't want us to, I mean, I think we can say we can say, you know, like, look, we're in a good place. And I think we can also say we worked really hard to get here and it was hard and it wasn't good for a lot of people. You know,
We,
and-
to your point, Andrea, we started this meeting hearing from Kim about how changes that to save funds, you know, have impacted her.
Yeah, and forgive me if I didn't. I agree. It's been hard, and I kind of want to stop the hard and say we did hard work and people were impacted, and let's pause on that. So anyway, forgive me if that came out in an insensitive way. It wasn't meant that way.
no, I was just kind of pointing out that, like, yeah, we got here because we did some really difficult work. And it was also some of the like,
Okay.
it was the low hanging fruit, right? So like future decisions that we have to make are also gonna affect people and are gonna affect more people.
Yeah.
So we're like in this, like, we're getting a little bit of good news, but it's not an overall good.
No, I agree with both of you. I think my caution is just that we have a history on this board of when we receive good news, saying, okay, we can back off the stuff we really don't want to do. And I just want to be careful and consider that, you know, today's good news is fleeting. And I don't want to tamp down the trajectory we're on just because, you know, we think it's the right thing to do, and it is, but from a fiscal standpoint, there's an opportunity cost to that. I think that's my biggest takeaway from how we handled Fare Free for so long.
I mean, it's interesting, and we look at that, what Clayton told us as good news. But underlying that is the fact that we're operating in the black possibly $300,000 next year. And we're operating in the black possibly $3 million a year after. So that's not good news. And that's very typical of what we've done operationally for as long as I can remember. We do not operate in the black. We operate in the red. If I said black, I meant red. We've operated in the red for years, and we continue to operate in the red. So that's not good news.
I'd like to, like I said, keeping the meetings that we have scheduled and the increased frequency we all meet to just use that breathing room to push our advantage, and try to figure out a way that we can bring a sustainable and stable funding structure to the legislature, whether that's some sort of regional fee, assessment, tax, whatever it may be, that's palatable, or something else. But I think it's going to take a lot of time of us connecting.
I guess the piece I would add to that is by still doing the hard work we've got to do, we can do it with a little bit more of a strategic focus to give us a little bit broader picture as opposed to a panic focus, but we still need to do all the work, and we'll be able to have our strategic discussions as we do it. And
I do want to expand a little bit on something that we heard from Andrea a minute or two ago, which is that when we implemented the service reductions in last December and in March, and then also in June, you know, we received some public feedback that was, you know, sort of negative, but we've received a lot more feedback for the changes that happened a couple weeks ago. And that, I think, truly shows that the service that remains is much higher utilized service, and that when we make the changes to that, it's going to impact a lot more people and create a lot more animosity and negative feelings towards GMT. Teo, I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you want to just say no thank you, feel free. But any advice that you could think of for, you know, how the transportation committees would, you know, view our next actions, and And because I could definitely think that some of our legislators who are transit advocates would be, encouraging us to not cut any more service, while some of the legislators that are focused on us being financially sustainable would want us. And how do you think things would play out with the legislative committees?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about just showing up first week of session with this info, I mean, my perception of these committees is that not everyone is a public transit expert. So the more information you can feed them prior to session is helpful. I think also we could do some we could arrange some one-on-one conversations with committee leadership and just present the information, gauge their response, and then figure out how, what work we need to do with them. I do get the sense from attending some of these forums that the legislators in your service area are very engaged, they understand acutely how important service is for workforce, housing, medical care, education. So, I mean, we have an advantage in that sense that our legislators really want to find solutions that work. Service changes, reroutings, reductions, whatever you want to call them, are always tough because people are always affected. But to date, I think the communications have been pretty clear that the changes made to date are performance based, and we want to try to avoid changing well-performing routes in the future. I mean, the legislators know they have options, and the options have been floated for years. So it's a matter of political will. Like Adam mentioned, it's a really tough year to be proposing, new ideas in the form of new revenue, unless we're kind of like shifting things around. But so short answer is, I think we just keep communication lines open with key legislators in the next few weeks and months, so that when we do go into committee, we're well prepared. We know what to expect.
Thank you, Tail.
So this is such a short meeting for these big conversations, and I apologize for being the rude person to move things along. But what I'm hearing is keep the meetings at the suggested pace, the increased frequency, and that will give us a little bit more time to be strategic, or to sit down and do a lot more strategic work to make sure that we're moving in most beneficial direction. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I just add one more thing. I mean, if and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from staff, more specifically from Nick, seeing some different scenarios of how we could use this breathing room on a 3 to 4 year trajectory would be really helpful in just understanding the opportunity cost of proceeding with more, route adjustments or pausing. Just would be really helpful to understand.
Okay. Clayton, does that help get us moving?
I think that makes sense to me.
Okay. I will add that, we've kind of a little bit paused on the kind of mission and visioning kind of work, but I keep hearing and knowing that we should move forward on that so that we can help have a framework for our decisions that is beyond or in addition to financial. So we should probably add those back into these meetings at some point.
I think you're right, Amy.
Okay. All right, going once, going twice. Okay, going to move on to the next item on the agenda. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is governance in statute.
So I'm going to do something that, let's see, my officer training school instructor, Captain Claunch, would have said that that what I'm about to do is a suicidal career tendency, which is that I'm going to tell my bosses that I think that we may need to think about the structure that you all sit on. And so with this past legislative session, we did some tweaks to the statute that governs us as a municipality in anticipation of the rural transfer. I think that it would be wise for us as we go back to an urban-only organization, that we consider tweaks there. And the thing that I feel that we should start at, but I want to gauge your perspective on this before I start this, because it involves, you all, and I report to you, is that I think that we need to, consider our governance. One of the things that I've sort of identified as challenges for us is that our board is very large. When I was out in Minnesota, I talked to as many, folks as possible about their governance structures. And, what I heard consistently is that, organizations typically are run, by groups that are about 5 to 7 people. The other thing that I heard somewhat consistently is that the people that are on those boards are very intimately connected with the funding. And so that there is not this disconnect between folks who are making budgetary decisions and business decisions on the cost of operations. It's that the people who are making those decisions are, the payers in the local community with the local match, or the state agency that, provides funds. And I think that I've heard from folks that our current board has gaps, in the sense that we don't have, representatives from employees. We don't have, there's perhaps folks who represent vulnerable populations that, we would want to, get input from. And then, of course, we want to hear from the people who use the service and are the sort of the advocates in their community for the service. But what I see happen is that those generally are on advisory boards. And so that there would be a very wide net cast to get community input. And those people are, traditionally volunteers. And then there would be a smaller governance group that's largely made up of folks that, have some sort of professional capacity, because, they, for example, with St. Cloud, it was the mayor or their delegate, for the communities that were served. And so that the people that were on the board, know intimately, how funding works within their community, and the politics behind, local funding. So before, I thought that it would be extremely presumptuous on my part to start drafting up statutory language that would make changes. So I wanted to throw the question to you all, is that, is this something that you are comfortable with me considering? Or do we want to, not consider a change in board makeup as we move forward?
I just saw Austin's note in the chat that he's got to hop off. So Austin, I'm going to directly ask if you have feedback first, so you can share it before you have to go.
I'm torn. As you know, and I said previously in this meeting, I kind of saw the nonprofit as a way to build out some of this advisory status, get some of the folks who, are writers, are employers, are, advocates for different causes, get their perspective. I also saw it as a great way to get at succession planning, where we can find folks, that are geographically distributed, so that when a select board or mayor are looking for a commissioner to replace a vacancy, we can say we already have someone in that community. So I think, that was my thought when I was chair on how, and still kind of is, on how we build out more advisory positions and status. That said, I mean, I don't necessarily think restructuring the board's a bad idea. And in addition to, or instead of that, I do think it's inviting more challenges when we already have quite a few challenges. And I think it has to just be discussed in a broader perspective. Is this something we're doing in conjunction with a new funding model with, because I think without changing the existing funding model, changing the existing board structure is not going to follow suit, and one will have to dovetail with the other. So I'm not sold. It's the cornucopia that, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily our most advantageous path forward when we have a lot of other things in front of us that we need to do. However, I'm not wedded to our current board structure, and I love slaughtering sacred cows, and I think many things need to change. So I'd follow your discretion. And if you want to bring something to us, then by all means.
Okay, thanks for working the word slaughter into our meeting today.
Apologies.
Uh-huh.
It's that kind of Monday.
Ouch. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I'm certainly not against taking another look at our governance. Other boards I've served on have been similar to this. Champlain Housing Trust has a very large board and made up of representatives from both communities and the general public. So it's a mix of both, which made a pretty decent board. Previously served on a hospital board, which is a community-based board. And I thought that was probably one of the better boards I've served on. And I'll tell you where that board went downhill when the CEO decided he needed more people with money who would come on that board and help the organization raise more money. And with that it's a difficult thing to manage, because a lot of people who have that that basis in their life also control what they like to control, including the board that doesn't get on. So it becomes very disruptive. So there's some real issues in my mind as to how we go about this, but to discuss it and think about what ways we go. 5 to 7 might be a little small, but we'll be 3 less if we have the merger. So that will be that'll be a little more manageable. One might be a little bit too big.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of throw in again, if you look at different transit agencies, some are municipalities, some are owned by a specific municipality and just part of their structure, and others are pure nonprofits, right? So in some ways, I like the concept of us being our own municipality, since we're cross town and without our form of county government, it's kind of the only way to do it. And when you look at your financial ownership, it's the financial ownership of the individual towns that are involved. So I don't think you can get away from a structure where each town, city, village, whatever it is, has a rep to cover their financial understanding as it feeds into that municipality of transit, right? At the same time, you need a little bit of the technical understanding that comes from the regional planning and the human service agencies, and the pieces that they don't have the financial interest so much, but they do have the demand and the structure understanding. So it's very interesting. I kind of got down this path because I had the discussion with about RCT's structure, because in their case, the regional planning is non-voting members of their board, where it's only and they're a pure nonprofit, first off, but their concept is the people that are the users of the service and understanding the service aren't really the voting members. They're more the help you. So that they kind of become your advisory panel, but you also have them in your board and you're part of your decision making and understanding all at the same time. So you're not isolated when you have your discussions. I'm not sure I agree with their structure yet, but I agree with you, Clayton, that it might be a good time to think about how that applies. And maybe it should be purely Burlington owned and move on from there. But
We'll see if Mayor Emma wants to become a transit director.
but I think you're right to still be a municipality but make that decision as you go through our dialogue.
And I think I'll only
So my
add
answer
that
is my answer is yeah. I think it's worth having a discussion. Whether it goes through a full blown process or not, it's another question.
and I agree. And I've said part of the sad part of the merger is losing the expertise of the NRPC folk, the RPC folk, because they are so skilled and knowledgeable in those systems. And then, the rest of us, although, some are municipal representatives directly, like Ilona and Chapin, but the rest of us are interested volunteers, and you get a wide variety of knowledge base and availability when you get that. I look around and I see some pretty outstanding individuals here at this table, but they are, we were lucky to grab those individuals. And so if there's a way to intentionally, and I'm not sure that there is, to continue to capture, the breadth of experience, that some of the folks here have, that would be amazing, but I don't know. So I agree. I'm going to fall in the camp of let's look at some options. And I can't predict at the moment the right path forward, because it's a moving organization with lots of pieces, and it's hard on volunteers, but it's also hard on professionals to make sure that this works into their work life as well. Paul?
Yeah, one nuance might be that most boards choose their representatives. In our board, they're chosen for us. And so that might be a way to go. I'll use Champlain Housing Trust as an example. I think they have 5 members that are from communities, like town managers or their representatives. But it's CHT that asks that person to join the board. It's not just willy-nilly. So it gives you some control over the folks and their expertise.
Yeah, but they're a nonprofit though, Paul. Also, right? They're not a municipality. So that's a different structure.
The legislation might be able to change that.
Okay. Clayton, do you have enough to play with? A little bit of a window to let's see what we can brainstorm?
Absolutely. And so I just really wanted to hear from you all that you're okay with, spending brain power on this now. And so we'll do that. And I have some basic ideas for what I think, we would want to do regardless of what we settle on. But by and large, I think that I can be flexible. I don't think that there's one true way to do it. And so, I'd be happy to craft a variety of options.
Great. Let's do that. And I see that we're at 12 and my 12 o'clock meeting just started. So are there any commissioner comments? Hearings? Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. It's lovely seeing you. I hope you all get to enjoy this gorgeous week we're about to have.
I have a question. How do you guys have these?
All of our, this is a monthly meeting and our monthly schedule is online.
Okay, thank you. Are they
Thanks.
posted on GMT's website?
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks to everybody. Have a great day. See you soon.
Bye, John Moore. Have a good day.